Lego's big girl exchanged her used pad for money. What happened next shocked everyone who knows her. Let me know where you are watching from, and don't forget to like this video and hit the subscribe button. Deborah had always believed she was born for more than the ordinary. Her friends from university had taken jobs after graduation, some as bank tellers, some as teachers, others as customer service reps. But the very idea of a 9-to-5 life made her skin crawl. "I wasn't created to slave for a monthly salary," she would tell anyone who cared to listen. "I'm a princess. I deserve the princess treatment." It wasn't that Deborah came from poverty. Far from it. Her parents were respectable middle-class Lagosians. Her father worked with the state government, her mother ran a modest but successful supermarket. Together, they had ensured Deborah and her two younger siblings went to good schools and never lacked the basics. But to Deborah, the basics were never enough. From her teenage years, she had been drawn to the glitter of wealth. She would scroll endlessly through Instagram, admiring influencers who traveled to Dubai on a whim, wore clothes straight off Paris runways, and drove cars worth more than some houses. She believed she belonged in that world, a world where the bills were paid by men with fat bank accounts and expensive taste. Deborah made her requirements for dating public knowledge. Sitting with friends at lounges in Lekki, she would sip her mojito and declare, "Any man with less than 10 million in his account should stay away from me. I can't suffer with anybody's son." Her friends laughed at her bluntness, but she wasn't joking. She wanted luxury, and she wanted it now. It was on one of those nights out in Victoria Island that her wish seemed to take human form. She was at a rooftop bar with two of her girlfriends, dressed in a gold bodycon dress that shimmered under the lights. That was when she noticed him. Tall, dark, with an aura of quiet dominance. His designer sneakers, diamond-encrusted wristwatch, and the keys to a limited edition sports car resting casually on the table told her everything she needed to know. Pablo. That was his name. He was one of the infamous big boys of Lagos, the kind of man whose name carried weight in certain circles. People whispered about his wealth, but never asked too many questions. He didn't need to speak much. His presence spoke for him. The first time their eyes met, Deborah felt like she had just won the lottery. And in a way, she had. Pablo walked over to her table with the confidence of a man who already knew the answer to the question he was about to ask. "You look like trouble," he said with a half smile, his voice low and smooth. "And you look like you can handle it," she replied without missing a beat. That was the start of a whirlwind romance that seemed to lift Deborah out of the ordinary and plant her in the life she had always dreamed of. Pablo didn't just give her attention, he gave her everything. Within days, he was sending her expensive perfumes, new iPhones, and cash just for upkeep. Weekend getaways to Abuja and Port Harcourt became normal. Dinner wasn't complete unless it was at the most exclusive restaurants. Deborah's friends watched in awe and a little envy as she transformed into the very definition of a Lagos big girl. Her Instagram page became a gallery of designer outfits, champagne toasts, and vacation selfies. She had finally stepped into the life she believed she deserved. Still, there was something about Pablo that didn't add up. She noticed he often got mysterious phone calls he would step outside to take. He never spoke about his work in detail, only saying, "I do business." Sometimes she heard rumors about his involvement in shady deals, but she brushed them off. "As long as he treats me well, I don't care how the money comes," she told her best friend one evening. For Deborah, Pablo was more than a boyfriend. He was a ticket to the life she had been manifesting for years. She didn't know it yet, but this ticket came with a cost. And it was a price she would pay with more than just her pride. At that moment, under the bright lights of Lagos, with Pablo's hand wrapped around her waist and the city skyline glittering in the background, Deborah felt untouchable. She had no idea that the man she adored had already begun planning the very act that would change her life forever. 2 months into her relationship with Pablo, Deborah had begun to feel more secure than ever. She no longer cared about her dwindling bank balance because Pablo's money flowed into her account like clockwork. If she wanted new hair, it was paid for before she could even ask. If she saw a designer bag on Instagram, she had it by the weekend. It was everything she had always dreamed of. But in the middle of this perfect picture, a small shadow began to grow. It started with an itch, nothing serious, just a mild discomfort in her private area. She ignored it at first, thinking it was the result of wearing tight clothes or maybe sitting for too long in the hot Lagos traffic. But within days, it became more frequent, more persistent. Deborah visited a local pharmacy and bought antibiotics. Give it a week, it will clear, she told herself. But instead of clearing, the itch turned into a burning sensation. She began to feel tired all the time. Even climbing the stairs to her apartment left her breathless. Her once glowing skin now looked slightly dull, but she masked it with makeup whenever she stepped out. Still, she didn't want to worry Pablo. In fact, she barely saw him during this period. He was always busy, always in meetings or traveling. When she mentioned feeling unwell, he would respond with short voice notes. "Babe, just rest. I'll send you money to go to the hospital." And he did. He never failed to send money, but he also never showed up to take her there himself. She booked a consultation at a private clinic in Lekki. The doctor ordered some tests and gave her antifungal medication, suspecting a yeast infection. Deborah took them faithfully, but the symptoms persisted. Soon, there were days she could hardly eat. Her weight began to drop. Friends noticed, but attributed it to stress or maybe a new diet trend. What Deborah didn't know was that her illness wasn't caused by bacteria, fungus, or anything a doctor could cure. Somewhere, in a dimly lit room far from the glitz of Victoria Island, Pablo had taken one of her carelessly discarded used sanitary pads and handed it to a man whose face was hidden beneath a red scarf. The pad had been thrown away after Deborah's last period, wrapped loosely in tissue and left in the small bin in Pablo's bathroom. She had been careless, never thinking something so private could be dangerous in the wrong hands. But Pablo knew better. For him, the pad was a powerful ingredient for a ritual, one that promised to multiply his wealth and influence. The ritual was swift and dark. That very week, Pablo closed 2 suspiciously lucrative deals. His cars were upgraded, his wardrobe refreshed with even more expensive brands. To the outside world, he was simply blessed with good fortune. To Deborah, he was the perfect man, still sending her large sums of money, even though he was often absent. But her health was the silent price being paid. She began waking up drenched in sweat, her heart racing for no reason. The burning sensation worsened, and no medication seemed to help. At night, she sometimes dreamed of Pablo smiling at her, only for his eyes to turn black and his hands to drip with something dark and sticky. She would wake up trembling, unsure why the dreams left her so uneasy. Despite her worsening condition, Deborah still clung to the idea that she was lucky. "At least I have a man who doesn't let me lack," she told herself while transferring some of Pablo's upkeep money into a savings account. She didn't notice how hollow her cheeks had become, or how her collarbones were now sharp beneath her skin. And still, Pablo never came to see her in person. When she suggested he accompany her to another clinic for a second opinion, he replied, "Babe, I trust you'll be fine. I'm just tied up right now. I'll send you something extra so you can take care of yourself." The truth, a truth Deborah could not yet imagine, was that every day her body weakened, Pablo's wealth grew stronger. The very man she trusted with her heart was the one behind her suffering. And with every passing week, the damage he had set in motion was becoming harder to reverse. By the 3rd month, Deborah was barely recognizable. The once curvy, radiant woman who lit up every room now looked like a shadow of herself. Her designer clothes, once perfectly fitted, now hung loosely on her frail frame. She had lost so much weight that her cheekbones jutted sharply beneath her skin. No amount of makeup could hide the dark circles under her eyes. When she went out, which was rare, People whispered. Some assumed she was secretly battling HIV. Others believed she had gotten involved with drugs. No one could connect her sudden decline to the man still credited in her phone as "my king." Pablo was more prosperous than ever. His new mansion in Banana Island had just been completed. He bought a limited edition car worth more than most people's lifetime earnings. His social media was filled with posts of champagne nights, yacht parties, and trips abroad. Yet even as he lived this high life, he still sent Deborah large amounts of money. Her account notifications would light up, but his presence was always missing. One afternoon, Deborah's close friend Anita came to visit. Anita had been worried about her for weeks, and seeing her in person was worse than she imagined. "Debbie, this is not you," Anita said, eyes wide with shock. "You've lost so much weight. You need to tell me what's going on." Deborah forced a weak smile. "It's just stress. I've been to the hospital, but they keep saying nothing's wrong." Anita hesitated before leaning closer. "Debbie, I need to tell you something, and I need you to believe me." Deborah's heart thudded in her chest as Anita recounted what she had overheard at a popular lounge 2 nights ago. A group of men were laughing over expensive drinks, and Pablo was among them. Between sips of champagne, Pablo had bragged about how his latest ritual had doubled his wealth. The key, he had boasted, was something personal from a woman who trusted him completely, a used sanitary pad. Anita's voice shook as she said, "Debbie, he mentioned you." Deborah's stomach turned cold. Images flashed through her mind. The time she had stayed over at Pablo's house, the casual way she threw her used pads in the bathroom bin, never thinking twice. The sudden onset of her sickness, his constant absence, the sudden overwhelming growth in his wealth. Her mouth went dry. "No, that's not possible," she whispered, more to herself than to Anita. But deep down, she knew the pieces fit all too perfectly. The days that followed were a blur. Deborah tried to reach Pablo, but his replies were short and dismissive. "Babe, stop stressing yourself. Focus on getting better." Yet he never denied what Anita had told her. And he never came to see her. Her health deteriorated rapidly. Eating became difficult. Even drinking water felt like a chore. Her once lavish apartment now felt like a prison cell. The large TV, the imported rugs, the expensive perfumes, they were all reminders of the luxury she had traded her safety for. The whispers outside grew louder. Neighbors started avoiding her. Old friends stopped calling. Even on Instagram, where she had once been a queen, her posts were now filled with concerned comments and cruel speculation. One evening, she sat in front of her mirror, staring at her reflection. The girl looking back at her had sunken eyes and dry, cracked lips. She was nothing like the vibrant Lagos big girl who had once strutted through Victoria Island without a care in the world. Tears welled up as she realized the bitter truth. She had gotten the luxury she craved, but the cost was her life. By the time Deborah gathered the courage to confront Pablo in person, it was too late. He was out of the country on another business trip. She never saw him again. The news of her decline spread fast. People were shocked at how quickly the glamorous Deborah had fallen. Some pitied her. Others said it was karma. But no one could deny the chilling reality. In her quest for a life of wealth without work, she had unknowingly handed over the most intimate part of herself to a man who saw her as nothing more than a tool for his own gain.